All right, welcome to Unlock Agentic B2C Commerce Developments. I hope you're expecting this session, because if not, well, I'm surprised. You're going to learn a lot about agentic development with our Agentic Force Commerce product. So first thing, forward-looking statement, as usual, we are going to talk about things that are coming up in the roadmap and have not fully shipped as GA, so please make your purchasing decisions based on what is publicly available. Thank you for joining us in person at TDX. If you're checking in online or via the recording, thank you for spending a bit of your day with us to learn more about this. We're really excited to show off what we've been working on for the last couple months. So I'm Drew. I'm one of our product managers. I've been working mainly in the Commerce Cloud space, or the B2C commerce space, for APIs, performance, front-end experiences, and lately working with Chuck, Charles here, on developer experiences and just improving a lot of what we've been working on. If you don't know Charles, he also goes by Chuck. You likely have used something he's worked on, or you've been in meetings with them. So Charles has been working on BC Commerce for a very long time. He's been both working at Salesforce on this, as well as at various implementation agencies. And so he's shipped a lot of open source plugins and likely something you may be using for your automation or CI/CD. So very honored to have Chuck on stage talking about something he's been super passionate about. Chuck, you joined us about 6 months ago, I believe, onto our product engineering team, roughly. And Chuck came in with the vision and a passion of let's go revamp our developer tooling. And so this session is really a grand unveiling of that passion and that vision. So yeah, really honored to have Chuck really be the bulk of this presentation. So getting to know you, just to break the ice, this was what Nano Banana spit out for when I said icebreaker. Apparently it's me in Canada in a quasi-Toronto, Vancouver city landscape with, I guess, 3 Astros ramming me with their icebreaker. Not exactly what I suspected would show up, but here we are. So a couple things. I want to know the audience a bit more. Love to understand really what has changed in your development flow over the last couple months. Really, we've observed a lot of our customers getting way more into agent-based development. And really, I would say the last 3 months, a lot more sessions and meetings and providing guidance to customers. So I would say we're going through a big shift, as you probably have noticed, as a big theme of TDX. So first thing, I'm a product manager, so I'm not shipping code to production day to day. That's probably a good thing overall. But even internally, we've seen a big shift. I'm a big Gemini user for a lot of requirements and research and synthesizing your feedback. We use a lot of Slackbot internally, so if you have at some point have your feedback end up in our Slack instance, likely I've used Slackbot to try to collate and collaborate a bunch of that together. And really lately, though, I think there's a big shift in non-developer roles using agents to ship prototypes to really just get the discussion going better with our development peers. And so that seems to be the evolving expectations. Is there's a blending of roles. Engineers, developers can use a lot of the LLMs to do a lot more research and best practices around requirements and UX, and then a lot of UX and product manager getting more into coding in terms of shipping prototypes. So that's kind of really what we're observing internally, and also what we're seeing with customers in terms of our interactions. Chuck, you've been using a lot of agents for your day-to-day for a while. What was your journey like? What did you start on? What did you end up with in terms of your setup?
Well, we've been building a lot on our own, but then Cloud Code came out about a year ago, almost exactly, actually. I spent a lot of my money out of my back pocket. Now Salesforce thankfully pays for that. But that's my journey. It was clear that Anthropic and other frontier models have solved the harness problem. That was really the problem up until the early last year, is that the harness wasn't perfect. Some of that was that the frontier models had to come up to speed, and other parts where the harness needed to be perfected. As we've done harnesses on our own, we've known that that's a difficult problem. Last year, they kind of came together. Now that's solved, now that we can focus on the tooling aspect, enabling it, context. So that's really what we're going to talk about today, really.
Great. So folks in person, who identifies a developer? Just out of curiosity, hands up. Who's a developer here? Who's a B2C developer? If you keep your hands up, you're most, okay, still a big portion of you. Folks who didn't put your hands up as developers, what are your roles? Are you like designers, business analysts, a product manager? Okay, cool, good, yes. We are seeing a big shift, so let's figure out how to do that together. Any other like non-developer roles? I'm kind of interested in seeing like who's attending this. Okay, for those using LLMs, I met a few this morning. Who's mainly using Claude? Who's the Claude users? Okay, Copilot. All right, a little bit here and there. How about Codex? Vibes. All right, so Claude still seems pretty dominant, so I think that's good.
Good.
We'll demo mostly in that. Good. Okay, thank you. That's my ad hoc understanding is like Claude's still pretty dominant in terms of what we're seeing in our customer base. So that pretty much confirms it. So in our 6 months of just revamping a lot of our developer experience, we kind of learned a couple key things here. So one is we were originally focused on the onboarding experience, so how to streamline onboarding for folks who are new to B2C commerce development. And what we realized on the way is we can't just streamline just for developers, we actually have to streamline for how to onboard your coding agents as well, because that is now the baseline expectation. So we evolved that a little bit to what we worked on to make sure that taking our starting point and make that work with LLMs straight from the start was really important. Number two, another thing we learned is a lot of our developer community, if you come to our unofficial Slack developer community, we have about 12,000 developers there. And we've had a lot of community contributions to tools. That's fantastic. We want to keep encouraging that. But also, it took a while to get our latest features into a lot of these community tools. So what we want to do is take a bunch of these best practices that we see codified in these contributions and make sure we have an open source Salesforce tooling that provides a lot of that, plus supports our newest capabilities straight from the first day they ship. So make sure there's no lag between a lot of the tooling we have versus the features that we have in place that we're shipping as a product team overall. Number three, automation. We wanted to bring a bit more consistency to the way automation happens for a project, so a lot of focus on CI/CD. And so we're focused on just rebuilding a bunch of the tools around there and making it a bit more standardized. What we learned on the way, though, the CLI tools we're going to work on to make that happen is equally as effective with using that as part of agent skills. So our investment into automation actually translated really well into how to make sure agents can use it just as effectively. And last thing, unification. So one of the things that we've been pushing on is trying to reduce context switching for developers. If you have worked with B2C commerce for a while, you do have to log into a lot of different systems, a lot of different UIs. And one of our goals is to kind of shrink that so you don't need to flip between a bunch of different UIs at the same time. But also what we recognize is as you look at local developments, you do have your own IDEs, you do have your own LLMs of choice. So how can we make sure you're focused on just like getting the same view of development as part of your local development, instead we have to switch into business manager here, log center here. So unification for us is super important. You got all four of those things, those learnings together. In the keynote this morning at TDX, one of the big announcements there was Salesforce Headless 360. Basically, I think we arrived at generally the same conclusion as the Salesforce Headless 360, which is basically make sure all capabilities are exposed as either CLI tools, skills, or MCP servers, and for us, underlying APIs. So I'm glad we arrived at the same conclusion, and really, we're going to see a lot of that today. So last thing is, we've been really previewing a bunch of this with a bunch of developers in our community for a while. One of our system integrators who've been using this dev tooling plus a bunch of our new front-end developments have shared that, okay, they're expecting that front-end dev time with Claude, with storefronts, and with using a bunch of the Figma integrations will be game-changing. They're predicting that this will save them about 70% of their time for front-end dev costs, which is a lot of our projects. So if we really see a 70% reduction or something even close to that, I think that's game-changing for the way we can implement projects faster and cheaper. And so we would love to hear back from you any data points you're going to arrive at as you kind of adopt a bunch of things we're going to show off today. So you can look at this number and say, okay, maybe it's just too complex at the start, which, okay, fair enough. Maybe that 70% reduction is based on existing complexity. So I think that's a good segue into, Chuck, into your part of the presentation where you're going to talk about our tooling and also just the complexity it has to deal with. So off to you.
Thanks, Drew. So as Drew was saying, B2C commerce development is complex. I mean, Salesforce core development is complex, but so is B2C commerce development. Those of you who aren't familiar, this is an off-core or near-core product. It does have some similarities to Salesforce.com development, but many differences. We've got proprietary APIs. We've got Okapi, which is our older commerce API. We've got Scapy, which is our new commerce API. There's a lot of overlap between them. We have Script API. Script API is JavaScript-based, but it's based on the Rhino engine, something that Mozilla shipped decades ago. This is what we call proprietary. We have proprietary ways of shipping code to the platform. Configuration, just like Salesforce.com, is XML heavy. Agents love this, but users often don't. There's a lot of multi-system orchestration that our customers and our developers need to deal with. And deep domain knowledge is required. Same thing as really Salesforce.com, but this is something that is a problem for agents in some ways. Even the frontier models struggle with this, with these proprietary platforms that we run on. And what happens without that context? Well, even the frontier models, Claude Opus 4.6 on high thinking mode, will do this. This is from Claude. It'll get XML wrong. It'll get schemas wrong. It'll try to do it. It'll try valiantly, and sometimes it'll succeed. But many times it will not. It'll hallucinate. This is, and I will actually see this exact one in a few minutes. It'll happily, it says B2C runs on the JVM, so we can use Java APIs. Well, the first statement is correct. B2C does run on the JVM, just like CoreWatt does. You cannot use Java APIs, though. That is a hallucination. You cannot do that. But it'll try to, and it'll fail. And it'll fabricate things like URL. This is directly from Vibes. It's just, it's actually getting some things right here, but it's assuming things. It's basically, we call these hallucinations. I don't know if that's even the right word, but it's kind of stuck. Without context, without platform availability, even though this documentation has been open for so long, and these frontier models are up, I think Opus is at August 2025, and its knowledge cutoff date. It still doesn't know. And when it does know, it often confuses it with other platforms. We see confusion with Salesforce.com APIs, which makes sense. It's a Salesforce platform. But we see confusion even with Azure B2C or Oracle Commerce Cloud or other similar things. All it needs to do is pick one wrong thing from any of those, and then the whole thing obviously falls apart. This is coding. You can't pull a random concept from another platform in. So these are hallucinations. Without that context, we get that. So it isn't intelligent. Again, these frontier models are very good at applying their context and applying the corpus of knowledge, but it's getting that context, grounding it in that context that we need. It doesn't know our APIs, it'll hallucinate endpoints. It doesn't know our schemas, it'll hallucinate in XML or JSON or whatever. And if it can't interact with the platform, it can't figure out what's wrong. It can't deploy, it can't import, it can't export, it can't check logs. If it doesn't have the tooling necessary, then it's just flying blind. Maybe it can deploy, maybe just the user deploys automatically. But if you're just flying blind, it's a problem. Now, when I'm approaching these tooling and these skills in this context, whether it's an MCP server or skills, I try to think about a junior developer that's just on the job. They got a basic understanding of what the B2C platform is. They've got their access all taken care of. But it's very unlikely that they're going to know even when these hallucinations are wrong. They're just prompting. Maybe it's the product manager that really doesn't know the code. They're not going to necessarily know. They might look. If it looks right, they might say, "All right, that looks right. Let's ship it." So that's the mindset I kind of put myself in. I've dealt with a lot of these junior developers over the years. What are the kind of questions? What are the kind of invocations that they're going to ask that they're going to ask of the LLM, of the coding agent, to get that right? So here's where skills, CLI, and MCP bridge the gap. Now, I think at this point in the conference, these are pretty well entrenched, especially with the announcement of Headless 360. These are the three pillars that the entire platform for developers, administrators, merchants should be available where those personas want them, meaning for developers in their coding agent. We've got seeing Agentforce Vibes on the right. But that's, we all had the hands up for Claude Code. We want you to bring Salesforce and bring B2C where you want to work with it. These skills teach the agent how to work with B2C. It's bringing that context in. These are tools. The CLI brings sort of the implementation behind the scenes and the idiomatic use cases. The skills in the CLI bring the idiomatic use cases. What I mean by that are, it's not good enough to say, hey, here's how you deploy code. Here's how you create product metadata. We should really be showing, how you really would use that in context, in usable context. Like I said, that junior developer, they might not know how exactly to apply these things, even when it does succeed. They might be making the wrong product attribute, or they might be exporting the wrong metadata. to make a change on. So idiomatic use cases are as important as the actual imperative work. And we want to bring this to where you are working, which means all major agentic IDEs, coding agents. So that's Vibes, that's Claude Code, that's Codex, that's Copilot. We see a lot of popularity across Copilot because Microsoft does bundle it with many of their licenses, and a lot of our customers have that. So it's important that we embrace things sort of open standards to bring this context, bring it to your agent. I will say, though, we do want Vibes native integration for B2C. We're going to preview that just a little bit, but that is coming soon. So we do want that to be a sort of flagship while still adhering to the open standards. Another quote, this is from an ISV partner who was helping me test the CLI and skills back in January. And I love this quote because he was basically saying, the skills work insanely well. The CLI is in implementation detail, and that's what I look at it as. We shipped a whole new CLI for our platform that covers over 200 different commands across about 40 different topics, and we're still growing on that. But my expectation was never that actually, your average junior developer would be typing those CLI commands. We knew that they were going to be putting it into Claude Code, asking it, very naive, often invocations. The CLI is an implementation detail. Now, this ISV partner is actually quite smart. He's one of our former architects, actually. But even for him, he's like, I don't like to type the CLI. I'm just going to ask Claude Code to do it. There's a manager in Salesforce that said a few weeks ago, he's like, I don't even run Bash anymore. My shell is Claude Code. Like, he just starts up Claude Code, and that's it.
It's true. I didn't bother how to learn how to build a custom API. I just use your skills.
Right. So at this point, people are going to lose this knowledge. It's going to be a different problem altogether. So for him, he says an implementation detail. I just use the skills to do the thing. I don't even remember what the thing was at that point in time. So yeah, let's take a look at a little demo. This is going to be semi-live and semi-pre-canned, and that's because, of course, these agents love to. I'm pretty convinced that all the frontier models know when they're being demoed, and so they will sabotage you. So I tried most of this stuff about 5 times successfully in a row. So the 6th time here will probably fail, and we'll have to try it a couple times. But just to set some context, we shipped a new set of developer tools for Salesforce Agentforce Commerce. This is the CLI. This is the implementation detail. Within those developer tools, we do have a large set of agent skills and plugins, and we're shipping new ones as well for different use cases. Right now, the available plugins, when we say plugins, we mean Claude Code plugins, but you'll see in a minute that doesn't matter as much. One for the CLI, one for general B2C development. We'll have one for merchant and admin, although many of those are also in there's a lot of overlap there. And then we'll have some for our new storefronts coming up, our new storefront coming up, or storefront next is what we call it. So you can install this as a Claude Code plugin, which is probably the easiest way if you're using Claude Code, but you can install it with Vercel's Skills API, but the CLI itself actually has its own installer. So if you run setup skills, and this is what I did for Agentforce Vibes, it'll actually auto-detect what IDEs you have installed, and you can do a manual install as well, and then install them in the general location for those IDEs, whether in US or global or local to a project. And we do support Agentforce Vibes, and we recommend just using the B2C CLI installer. But just like any other skills, you can copy and paste and modify them. Great thing about them is that they are very free form in terms of moving them around. So let's take a look. I'm going to start in Vibes. So we've already seen this, right? This is just a dummy commerce site. But I have the B2C CLI and B2C skill sets installed here in my workspace. One thing I like about Vibes is that you can turn them on and off with this one little switch. I don't think any other IDE does that just yet, or makes it as easy to do that. So you can make little sets of on the fly. But I'm going to leave them all enabled. And turn this off here. And let's take one use case here. I'm going to go to my Northern Trail Outfitters website where I have an error here. I'm just going to refresh the page and cause the error to happen again. Now, I could try this error. I'm going to say, what do I say? My controller is throwing an error. Let's investigate. And like I said, this is a live demo, so we'll see how Claude does, or Vibes does. So Agent Force Vibes has loaded the B2C logs skill to investigate logs. So it's going to execute some commands here to get the latest. Of course, my input tokens exceeded, so we'll try. This is what I say, the live demo. It did this fine just a minute ago, so let me try it one more time. By the way, there's a resume task. Do one more. See if it gets it right. Again, the last 5 times I did it right. What we wanted to do is to ask for the recent logs and not all of them. And it did it. So since the last hour, that's much better. This is sometimes you gotta give it a little push here. So I've identified the error from the logs. The controller foo is throwing a type error at line 35. So it's gonna take a look at it, and as Agent Force does, it's gonna make the change for me. Hopefully saves it, edit the file, do some work here. Yep, blah, 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 blah. And of course it's grounded. Oh, it got the command syntax wrong. This is what we call progressive disclosure. It tried to deploy using the CLI, the code. It didn't use the skill right, but it did use progressive disclosure by asking the CLI for how to use it. This is what I like about using a CLI as the implementation detail, because even if you don't encode that in skills, the CLI itself can progressively disclose through its help. So it's gonna deploy, it's exceeded, come over here, and my controller is fixed. Didn't touch it at all. I just had that one prompt. So this is when you made the junior developer kind of prompt. I don't know what's going on. I guess I used the right word, the word controller, but I just said, no, it's throwing an error, let's investigate. Like that's a junior level prompt. Really don't know anywhere, not giving any class for the error, didn't even give the name of the controller. And Agent Force Vibes has decided to equip the skills to find and debug that. If I didn't have it grounded in these skills, if it didn't have a tool like the CLI, it would probably flounder here. Let's try another use case. I'm logged out, of course. Again, live demo. Let's log in and take a look. We'll go to Page Designer, which is in B2C commerce, effectively the equivalent of Experience Builder. I'm going to go to the home page of our storefront next here. This is an NTO version of it, and I've got a hero banner here. And hopefully, let's see. Let's update the hero banner on the page with ID homepage. Let's say adventure awaits you TDX instead. Now, again, this worked 5 times in a row. We'll see what it can do here. So this is sort of an admin kind of use case, or really, it is a developer use case. It's an admin one. It's a merchant one. But it's equipping the skills to figure out how to do this. So it's loading the B2C content skill. The B2C content skill informs of it all the things it needs to do. Oh, great, let me use my usage limit. Here we go. Informs it of all the things it needs to do to deal with content, basically. So it's going to run the content list command, define content. Again, live demo, and again, I've got a backup of all these. So it's going to export the library, define that. Gets a whole bunch of stuff here. It's going to export it. Found the home page. It's going to export it. Kind of hallucinated something here. Again, that's a hallucination. That's not how the export normally looks, but that's okay. It's going to explore it, and we've also grounded in that. And here we want to work on it. Again, the last time I did this, it took about like 30 seconds. Let's approve the edit here. And there we go. It's going to edit my XML for me. It found it. It found that under the hood. Now, I could have done that in the business manager. I just had it open. But this is what we're saying with Headless 360. Maybe I don't want to log into the business manager. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe as a developer, this is part of a multi-step task that I just made to make this change. It probably would be. This probably wouldn't be the prompt I would use. It might be a prompt that's inferred and that these tools are equipped to do it on the fly here. And basically it's hallucinating because the model has now degraded, so now it's hallucinating a little bit. So, but it made the change in the XML. It can import that and show it an update, basically. And we're not gonna sit here and watch it do that all the time, but if you can see this other one where the model didn't degrade because it didn't run out of credits, it worked just fine, the task was completed, and it updated there. Now, we've got other tools that let you do this imperatively. In fact, for Page Designer, we can actually go and list the library right here, and we get a tree view of it. And if I go and find that home page, there's that hero banner. If Agentforce did update it, it would have updated it here and said TDX, but I can do that now. So of course, this might be a lot faster, but like I said, that prompt might have been something that was organically came up as part of a larger development task. In fact, I know it would. These are the kind of things that come up. You're developing some kind of controller or page, and you need demo data. Just have the agent equip that. I'm going to move over to Claude Code. I'm not actually going to let Claude code this because we don't want to see these. So I've got some predefined ones here. I'm going to scroll past a lot of text. It's all mostly irrelevant, but we're going to get to the juicy parts. So first one, let's create a custom API for a mock fraud check service. It equips the custom API development skill. This is a complex thing. You've got open API schemas that you need to do. You need script implementation. It needs that context. It cannot do this alone. I've tried it, and it just can't. But with the grounding here, it writes a good one. The cool thing is that it tells me the next steps. Of course, we need to deploy and activate the cartridge, do all this, do this. I don't want to do that myself. Claude, you do it. So Claude will equip the B2C code skill and do it for me. It knows it needs to reload my code version because that's very important for custom APIs. So it does that. Claude decided it would go and check the status because it learned through the skills that we actually have a custom API status command. And it goes and does this. Again, CLI commands that make it so you don't have to go check this yourself. Both endpoints are live, so it wrote a custom API, deployed it, checked it, and I didn't even watch it do it. I went and just got a coffee while it did that. We asked it to add a new attribute to the basket object for our fraud check results. It can do that. Imports it. Again, it needed to learn about that. It did that. So that succeeded. Let's try another one. Let's create a product export job for OpenAI. We need a product feed for OpenAI's agentic commerce protocol. I gave it just the link to that spec. This is a common task. I'm sure half a dozen of our B2C commerce folks have actually needed to do this as they've done that, but let's have Claude try it. So I fed it the feed reference, and of course it spent a bunch of time exploring that very large file, but then it equipped the B2C custom job step skill. Again, these are things that will absolutely hallucinate and if you try to get it to do it on its own. But it'll do that. It'll write the step type JSON and the implementation script for this. It knows that it has to output in new line delimited JSON. So it wrote that step type. Again, I'm going to scroll past a bunch of the implementation details. It needs to deploy it. I asked it to deploy it and create a job. So first it told me, hey, it's ready to go, the implementation. Oh, I don't want to go into business manager. I want to stay in my coding agent. You do it, Claude. Deploy it and create the job implementing that script. So it equipped two skills back to back. Of course, the code one we've already seen to deploy code, and the B2C job one to tell it about jobs. So it deployed the code, blah, blah, blah. And then it created the XML for that new job. And it basically said, it looked up what site ID, kind of just guessed at my first site ID because it has the cartridge we wrote it on. That's fine, I didn't give it the details. It's going to update that, and it imports that job. Oh, but that failed. This is where hallucinations come in. So it didn't quite get grounded yet on the XML. So it's got invalid XML. But the cool thing is the CLI tells it by getting the import log in the context of the result of the CLI call, and it basically says, hey, it's wrong. So 2 schema errors. The cool thing is we've got a doc skill now. And the doc skill does exactly what it says, but it also does a lot more than it says. It has a schema validation command in it. So it's able to get the underlying, in this case, XML schema, and it clearly shows what's wrong with its XML. So again, I haven't even typed anything since that second prompt there, and it's able to correct itself automatically and equip these skills on demand. So it's all done, it deploys it, it runs it. Got another problem here. It checked some more logs, so we'll scroll back into the interesting stuff. Finally, the blah, 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 blah. Lots of work it did to get to this point. Again, this is real stuff. It's using the web dev tools to get the file after it ran the job successfully, which is great. Again, progressive disclosure. We do have a skill for it, but I decided to try progressive disclosure instead, but that worked fine. Downloaded it. Here's the summary. And they say, okay, great. According to OpenAI, we need to send a compressed file from the docs. It needs to be compressed. Now, again, that's what that screenshot I showed in the slides. It likes to hallucinate Java code when running B2C script API. It didn't do it this because it already actually read the docs and it figured that out, that it knows the exact API it needs to do that. But I have a little prior session here where I literally had to say, you can't use Java APIs because it spent a good, while I was getting coffee again, it spent a bunch of time writing Java code that just wasn't going to work. I gave it a little hint, you can't use Java APIs, but then it says, the user is right. Let's consult the docs. And it consulted the docs and found that gzip method correctly. So again, it was like 6 prompts I had to type here, all junior level prompts. And it's equipping the skills and equipping the CLI to correct itself.
That's a good example, though. I think both those examples would have taken like a new developer like 2 days maybe to kind of get close to that.
The junior developer sometimes wouldn't even ship it until somebody would take over for them. That's been my experience sometimes. But yes, these take a while. The debugging and learning about this, reading docs, et cetera. Before we go to questions, I just want to say, like, one of the best things about this too, about skills, especially over MCP, is that I can go and use it as a learning tool. So we're saying, all right, maybe we lose this kind of knowledge. Well, no, actually, I can go and actually ask Claude, hey, tell me how to deploy code, or tell me how to create a shopper login client, or tell me how I can make a script to onboard my customers to my single sign-on system. And instead of just having it do it, because it can use the skill, because it can use the CLI, because it uses progressive disclosure, it can teach you how to do it. And I tell this to developers even in Salesforce all the time. Hey, they ask me, like, what is the CLI command to do this? Well, we document it. I could send them the docs. Now I'm just telling them, just ask Claude. It'll tell you exactly what it is. It's grounded in it. Let it teach you. So I think that this, we say that sometimes we're going to lose this kind of knowledge. No, it's actually a pretty good learning tool on its own. And I have some examples of that, but I'm running low on time, so maybe we can jump to questions. I'll go back to the slides too.
All right. Thank you for the demo, Chuck. That's like, again, a lot packed in there. We'll get the questions in just 1 single second. Again, if you need a QR code to hit the doc site, also a link to the GitHub. And if you have feedback on this, we're also on our kind of developer community Slack. So if you have any feedback, you could definitely catch us on there as well. A couple things coming up that we'd love to, again, get a bit more developer feedback on. We are looking at adding to the CLI a bunch of interactive authentication methods so you could get started a lot quicker. We are trying to also standardize our CI/CD setup by auto-generating, say, GitHub Actions for you, and introducing a way to get changes, configurations code out in a standardized and safe way. We are adding a whole bunch of IDE plugins and Agentforce Vibe support, as well as trying to improve the way you clone on-demand sandboxes with a bunch of custom cloning. From a storefront perspective, at Connections, you'll see us launch something new called Storefront Next. That's a new set of storefronts based on React, Invite, and Tailwind, which is all very AI-friendly, as well as a bunch of skills for like Figma to React code. We're also trying to consolidate into what's called a developer workspace, which will introduce the ability to manage storefront deployments and API clients in Business Manager itself, as well as put a bunch of dashboards in there for performance and metrics. So you only have one place to go look at to see how your storefront is actually performing, as well as look at what your API setup actually looks like. So again, if you have more things you want to see to improve the developer experience, please ask the question, give us feedback, reach to us on Slack. We definitely are trying to expand out our roadmap for you. And Chuck and I would love to hear your feedback there. Session summary, you'll see a recording, you'll see a session summary in your events app and on the sessions page. So again, thank you for coming. I appreciate that, and enjoy the rest of TDX.
Thanks, folks.